So new buffed Eldar Rangers hitting on 2s and with a couple of fun new upgrades. Let's see what these new cloaked sniper outcasts can do in the new Eldar Codex. Hello and welcome back to Warspecs Tactics, where today we're talking about yet another nice new leaked datasheet. Today it appears that we have the new rules for the Eldar Rangers, with what appears to be a leaked datasheet from the upcoming Eldritch Omens box. A massive thank you to the chap who sent me this in, and putting it together with a few of the other bits from the leaked Eldar Codex, we really know quite a lot about how they'll function. At the moment in Codex Craft Worlds, Rangers are a little bit underwhelming, much like most of the rest of the troops' choices to be honest. Their sniper rifle profile was only passably good when it first came out, and since everything has got extra toughness, wounds and saves over the course of the last couple of editions, their damage output certainly hasn't got any better. In 8th edition they had the power to be particularly obnoxious, stacking -2s to hit and getting insane bonuses to their saving throws, but with the loss of things like stacking modifiers and one FAQ that hurt the data slate, it meant that like a lot of the rest of the Eldar Codex, they just really weren't so strong. Arguably still one of the better troops choices though, just because they can deep strike for free onto the battlefield, which at least made them some use for things like screening, objectives and actions. With very shiny nice new plastic models coming out in Eldritch Omens, it's really not too surprising that Games Workshop are going to be amping up their datasheet along with basically everything else in the Craft Worlds Codex. So let's take a look at what these sniper rifle wielding outcasts can do. So in what appears contrary to some of the rumours that came out around Christmas time, Eldar Rangers do still appear to be a troops choice and have between 5 and 10 models in the squad. I did find it a bit suspect at the time that the source said that both Dire Avengers and Rangers were both moving to elites. That would have left the troop slot very depleted indeed. From later leaks though, it does appear that the Rangers are hopefully staying as troops, whereas the Dire Avengers do appear to be going to elites alongside the rest of the Aspect Warriors. It's certainly good news for them being played a bit more, being troops grants OBSEC, and also is very helpful for fulfilling detachments, and the Rangers might well be in a particularly best place, as from rumours that I've seen, it does appear that they are going to be the cheapest troop slot among the Craft Worlds forces. In any case, it looks like they'll be remaining at the same points cost they were before, 13 points per model, or 4 power level per 5 models, or 8 per 10. That appears a slight bump on the power level side, if you play with that system compared with points. Their stat line does appear to be broadly similar, move 7 inches, weapon skill 3+, ballistic skill 2+, strength and toughness 3, 1 wound, 1 attack, leadership 7 and a 5+ save. Basically unchanged aside from the very nice ballistic skill, means they'll be hitting on 2s when they're stationary or 3s when they're moving, a nice little upgrade. I think we kind of knew that this one was coming already though, as it seemed unlikely that the Shroud Runners would get ballistic skill 2+ and these guys wouldn't. Keywords wise, they are core infantry as you might expect. They have Outcasts and Rangers rules. The Outcasts one will allow them to synergize with the Shroud Runner datasheet that we saw before. I did cover it in a previous video, which you can feel free to search if you want to, but the Shroud Runners can basically allow all Outcast units to ignore cover against one nominated target. Finally, they have a keyword called Resonator Shard. That one seems like a bit of a weird one to me. I'm not entirely sure what a Resonator Shard might represent, but I'm certain that the keyword will activate some sort of stratagem for them. It just remains to be seen whether or not it's an offensive or defensive buff. Perhaps the most exciting bit though are their war gear changes. The Ranger long rifle buff I think is maybe a touch underwhelming, but they've got a couple of really quite fun upgrades. The Ranger long rifle has basically gained a pip of AP. It does appear to be just the same as the Shroud Runner one, 36 inches, heavy 1, strength 4, AP -1, damage 1, ignores lookout sir, and mortals on a wound roll of 6. Like before, I think it is a touch on the underwhelming side for actually doing its sniping job. Even if you went fairly heavy on the Rangers, 10 of them for 130 points, that's still only going to be 3 or 4 wounds on a Space Marine character on average. Worse if they're in cover or the Rangers have to move. Or around about 5 wounds to a lightly armoured toughness 3 character, something like a Skitarii Marshal. I feel unfortunately that sniping is still going to be one of the things that they might just be able to do as a side effect, and their main value is still going to be movement shenanigans, screening, and just being a nuisance. Now the distance just really isn't all that kind for snipers to be honest, bodyguards are everywhere, and line of sight blocking cover is quite easy to achieve. Perhaps the more interesting bit about their gear though, is that it does seem that the squad can upgrade with 2 different special bits of kit, one being a Gloomfield generator, and one being a Wireweave net mine. It appears that you can take one of these on a model per every 5 models in the squad, so a squad of 10 could have both. I'm going to guess that modelling wise, the Wireweave net might be the one on the top left hand corner, the mine type thing that the Ranger appears to be keying into, and perhaps that Gloomfield is represented by that mini shrine they have. Otherwise, I'm not really too sure what his in-game rules purpose would be. I think in general you might want to pick up one of these. Both of them I'd say are kind of annoying. The Gloom Field Generator gives them a little bit of their old -1 to hit shenanigans back. If you're greater than 18 inches away when you shoot them, then the Rangers count as getting dense cover, so are normally going to be -1 to hit. Pretty handy for keeping them alive on what is still a fairly fragile unit. And the Wireweave Net is more something that you want to upgrade if you think that you're going to be charged. Once per game when the enemy tries to charge you, you can activate this. On a 2+, the enemy takes D3 mortal wounds. And if you do roll that 2+, then also the enemy will be -2 to charge when they're attempting to charge the Rangers, potentially making a fairly safe charge into one that's far more difficult to make. That could really stack well with putting them in some difficult ground perhaps. You could make them seriously irritating to charge, and for 5 points if you do manage to deal that D3 mortal wound, then you might have already made your points back on that 5-point investment. I think it kind of depends on what role that you're using them for. If you're thinking of using them for backfield objective campers and screening, then the Gloomfield is better. If you're using their forward deployment ability for screening out the enemy and maybe jumping on midfield objectives, then the Wireweave Net I think is pretty much an auto-include. If you do use that, then that's 5 points amazingly well spent. Finally, in terms of special rules, the Rangers do have some typical ones for the Eldar, plus the advanced position ones that the Shroud Runners do. I believe that one will either allow them to forward deploy or get a pre-game move. They have Strands of Fate for the automatic 6s when you need to punch one in. That's very relevant on those Ranger long rifles. If you absolutely just need one character to take one more mortal wound to kill them, then it's pretty epic to be able to guarantee that. Finally, Battle Focus I think is really quite relevant on the Rangers. I believe that you will be able to use it with heavy weapons. So being able to jump out of cover, shoot, and then jump back into cover is going to be seriously irritating. It makes their low damage output a lot more bearable if they're going to be truly annoying to shift. Finally, similar to the Shroud Runners, the Rangers do basically retain their +1 to save while they're in cover. Only starting on a 5+ save, it's really not going to change the world, but it does mean that say if you have them in on a Ruin, then they will be saving on a native 3+, so it will be a little bit better than you might expect at tanking small arms. Overall, when taking all this together, I do feel that the Rangers are a unit that might well see play, but you're really not going to want to overcommit to them in an Eldar list. They're going to be limited to a couple of peripheral units, either scouting forward or holding backfield objectives. Their sniping damage output might be able to surprise you once every so often, but it's really not going to be on the same level as the vast majority of other models in the Codex. Still though, if they do manage to become the cheapest troops choice, then they will be taken I think. Generally in 9th edition having a few chaff troops to be able to do grunt work is usually a good thing. All the better if they have objectives secured and are able to fill some slots as well. So anyway, let me know what you think of the new Rangers down in the comments below. I must admit, perhaps not one of the most exciting datasheets of the Codex, though I do really like the new models. I think they've reimagined them really well. If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, where I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming, with new ones out just about every day. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page, and you can find that down in the video description. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some really big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.